Ice Cave Radio is proudly sponsored by Invasion Comics and Cards. Located in Richmond Hill, Ontario, just minutes north of Toronto, Invasion carries one of the largest inventories of Star Wars Unlimited singles, and yes, we're shipping all across North America. Invasion hosts a wide array of events, from weekly casual play to higher stakes tournaments. Go to invasioncnc.ca and use code ICECAVE5 to score 5% off your Star Wars Unlimited singles and 3% off Star Wars Unlimited sealed product.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Ice Cave Radio. Doa and CHARM3R here with you to talk about everything Star Wars card game related. 99% Star Wars Unlimited, of course. That's how we always do it, CHARM3R. I mean, we talk about other card games sometimes in the Star Wars universe, but we're really here about Unlimited, you know? Our discussion is limited to Unlimited most of the time.
You're not wrong, but you're also somehow lying at the same time, because we definitely are a Star Wars Unlimited podcast. And
yes,
we
that is true.
talk about that game, but I don't think 99% is a proper ratio, because we will go on tangents, not just about other Star Wars card games, but about Star Wars video games, Star Wars media, culture, content, etc.
Star Wars food. And going to talk about that today.
Yeah.
Yep.
We're absolutely going to do that. We do also cover the headlines, of course, for Star Wars Unlimited. The big headlines this week that we are going to be diving into are more card reveals, because, again, they just keep pumping out spoilers for
season.
The next set. Yeah, Shadows of the Galaxy. And we are, of course, going to mention the live stream that occurred as well. But before we get into any of that, we always start things off with our Cave Poll of the Week.
That's right. Let's jump right into it. So, our question this week for the Cave Poll was, what are you hungry for in a galaxy far, far away? Obviously, Star Wars is known for a lot of things. Food is one of those things. I feel like there's some notable edible items that pop up throughout the Star Wars cinematic and TV history, and it's impossible to include them all in a poll. I did a write-in thing last week for the video games, CHARM3R, but like it just got too big, and people were like writing things that were already one of the options. So I thought this time I'm just going to pick 9, and that you're just going to have to pick between these. So it's out of these, what are you hungry for? So there were a lot of different options. Looking at what we had roast porg was an option. We had Jawa juice, we had blue milk, raised portion bread, of course, the romantic flying fruit that Anakin, chops and sends over Padme's way, Luke's rebel rations that he eats on Dagobah, before Yoda steals some of them, Jabba's frog snacks. We had a whole bunch of these. So Yoda stew, of course. So I'm curious, what did you pick? What did you go with?
I personally selected Yoda's stew because it was the most kind of comfort food looking to me.
I can appreciate
And when
that.
I think about things that I just want to like settle down and eat, right? I think Yoda's stew, I don't know what's in it, but I think Yoda's stew is going to be the most like, warm meal on a cold winter day type option. The milk kind of scares me. It always has. Jawa juice, I don't know what they're going to put in it. It might be motor oil for all I know. Ray's portion bread did not look appetizing in the least bit.
Cool special effect, but...
Yeah. Anybody who's either been in the military or knows anyone in the military knows that rations are never something you're excited about in any stretch of the imagination. I've actually had frog legs in real life, but Jabba's frog snacks do not look appealing to me either.
A little too fresh.
A little too fresh for me. And then I'll be honest, I think porgs are adorable. I know that a lot of people are not a fan, but I think they're adorable. So eating a roast porg kind of makes me sad.
Well, I got some bad news for you then when we look at our poll results. But I have to talk about my choice first. I think I picked Jawa juice because it's just the most insane thing on the entire list. Like when they said that in episode 2, because remember that's what Obi-Wan drinks at Dexter Jester's like 1950s sort of like not cantina, but like
Easy type thing.
restaurant kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, like
Diner, I guess.
diner,
Yeah.
maybe. Yeah.
1950s diner. I was like, what in the world is Jawa juice? That sounds awful. You can think of all sorts of ways in which that is something that is horrible. But it stands out, and Obi-Wan drinks it down with a smile on his face. So what can you say? I got to go with that because it's the most ridiculous option possible. But let's look at the results. Here on the screen right now, you could see, much to your sorrow, Charmer, roast pork did win with 37 votes. 33, 1 in 3 people who voted in the poll wanted to eat a porg. I'm not sure if that's a meta commentary on the sequels. I'm not sure if that's a meta commentary on porgs versus other cute things in the Star Wars universe. Either way, people are down, just like our hero Chewbacca, to munch on a porg.
You know, I don't fault them because when you look at this list, for me, it is probably the closest thing to a rotisserie chicken. I just think that they're cute. I just couldn't. I don't think that I could do it. But I understand those who voted for it. I do get it.
Yeah, fair enough. Jawa Juice took second, which again, I mean, it just stands out. What could you say? Yoda's stew, I think, is the classic option. We'll say here. Hearty flat cakes. That's something that was being served on the transport ship that took Anakin and Padme back to Naboo. And I think that droid popped up in Book of Boba Fett, if I remember right, too, like fighting people. I don't know. Raised portion bread. If you look at the special effects behind that, it's really interesting how they got that to work as an on-camera effect. Really cool, actually. Blue milk. You can go buy that in stores right now. It's on the shelves in grocery stores around the nation, around the United States. It's vanilla flavored. I drank some the other day. It's just blue vanilla flavored milk. It tastes wrong, but it's an experience that I recommend everyone try at least once. You know, yeah.
I know it wasn't an option on this list, but I've had green milk in the past, but it's not the way you probably think.
Don't get me started.
There was a local dairy here in Michigan that used to sell like flavors of pre-bottled milk, right? So like you could go and buy like a white milk, a chocolate milk, a strawberry milk, but they had a mint chocolate option that was like green, and it was really good. As somebody who likes mint flavor in general, I loved it. And then they stopped carrying it, and I remember asking the people, I was like, hey, where'd the flavor go? And they were like, well, they're not gonna do it anymore, and if we're being honest, you're the only one who ever bought it.
You couldn't support it enough. Oh,
yeah.
So maybe when Luke's squeezing the green milk out of that giant sea cow or whatever it is, he just loves the minty goodness of green milk. That's what I'm gonna assume. Speaking of Luke, we have his rebel rations, the little tin of food that he brings to Dagobah with him. Then of course only 5 votes for Anakin's romantic flying fruit, which I think is just a pear. To be fair, it's just a pear, but it does provide an interesting, not really a MacGuffin, but object of attention in that scene. It's a fun scene. And then we got Jabba's frog snacks, which he is seen eating in multiple movies. Just loves chewing on live frogs. Just a fan.
Yeah.
Jabba's got some unsavory habits.
To be fair, there's probably something to it because we have seen Grogu eat similar things. They probably are delicious in that galaxy. I
mean, I didn't mind when I had frog legs when I was in Hong Kong once, and they were good, but they are. People say a lot of stuff tastes like chicken, but like honestly, frog legs taste more like chicken than anything else in the world that is not chicken. But they were just kind of inconvenient because they were so small compared to like a chicken leg. I'm like, yeah, well, this is just like chicken flavor. Why am I not just eating a chicken leg? Why am I having to worry about these tiny little legs? They're just inconvenient,
Yeah, exactly. I personally felt like they tasted like gator, but
yeah, I suppose
gator
there's similarity
also tastes
there,
like chicken.
That's true.
So it's kind of one and the same. It's all white meat, right?
Yeah, well, it's kind of like reptile meat, I feel like, is sort of this hybrid between like fish and poultry. It's kind of like right there in the middle. And like, so amphibian meat is similar, although a little bit more on the chicken side, in my experience anyway. When I've been fortunate enough to travel the world with esports stuff, and I try to try everything when I'm in a different country, from bugs to emu to whatever's on the menu. You know, I'll give it a shot once. Yeah.
So in the past, I used to be like that. Then, you know, this is a bit of an aside, but then
Okay.
I did a bit where I was actually a vegetarian for a long time.
Oh.
I was exploring a lot of different options in my life, we'll say that. And now my rule of thumb, I still don't eat like beef. I don't eat pork. I don't eat things like that, but I do eat meat. My rule of thumb now, as weird as it's going to sound, is I just don't eat anything that I would want to hug, hence the pork exclusion.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
So with that in mind, for example, I eat a lot of turkey because I think turkeys just have it coming. I don't like them. They make me very angry. We have a bunch of wild turkeys where I live, and they are just dumb animals.
We have
emus.
We had a herd of a herd, like a flock of wild turkeys that would hang out by our house in Minnesota, actually, too. So,
emus would be on my list.
Yeah.
I think that they are just angry spawns of evil. So I would absolutely eat emu eggs or just the bird itself. Cassowaries, I think, belong in that club as well. They're just angry.
Those are just dangerous.
So they got it coming. Yeah.
Cassowary would take you out,
but,
man. Yeah.
I think, you know, all this avian talk is a great time for us to not only end our poll segment, but also to get us back on track.
Yeah.
Word on the street is you and I have.
Real packs.
So maybe
this is the rarest
now
thing.
Is the time to do this. Yes,
I think it is. We've talked about emergency packs in the past, and we've been using organized play packs for a long time because that's kind of all we've had access to. Well, both of us had went to Store Championships randomly and were handed actual packs of Star Wars Unlimited, which is super rare right now. You don't see these a lot. So that's exciting. What's a little bit less exciting about mine is that the person who was handed their pack right after me pulled a Showcase Krennic, so I can say with some confidence that there's no Showcase in this, at least, which is sad. I've missed it by this much. Like, I still have not opened a Showcase, so oh well.
Well,
you've got a shot, though.
Folks, the folks next to me did not open a Showcase, but I can also say with some confidence that there's not one in here because that would just be insane luck, and I don't believe I have that. So
I opened the Princess Leia Organa out of the Jabba's Palace booster in the old CCG when we did that. So I think I might have used up all my pack luck on the show. Yeah, we'll see. Who wants to go first? You want to go first, or should I go first? We shouldn't do them at the same time. We should do them sequentially.
We should do them sequentially. I guess I will go first.
Go for it.
Because I'm already opening it, and so that's going to be the executive decision. And Sabine. No Showcase, just a Sabine
pretty good
leader. We have. See if I can do anything.
Oh, you gotta.
Way.
You gotta.
Where's my
close
camera?
To your face.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
Sadly, though, I'm not seeing any Showcase stuff.
Oh.
Any hyperspace stuff.
No
so
hyperspace?
our
K2SO.
End, no hyperspaces. So our end is I have a K2SO as the rare.
That's a good rare.
That's not bad.
It's like what, $10, $15 rare.
Then a foil cargo juggernaut.
Nice. I mean, I think a K2SO is always good because there's always people that need that are trying to build Sabine. I'm gonna open my pack here. This one doesn't contain Cerveza Crystal as well, in case anyone's curious. But we got Han Solo for our leader card. Yeah, rare leader. Let's see. So we'll go through it this way. Han Solo. We got the red base. Rebel Pathfinder. Make an opening. Can you see? Okay, there we go. Cantina Brawler.
Yeah, you can see yours much better than mine.
Death Viper or Death
Wampa.
Wampa.
That's the most important card.
That's right. Corellian Freighter. Jawa Scavenger. Gamorrean Guards. No hyperspace either. Rebel Assault. Admiral Ozzel, come on, a takedown, and it binds all things is the rare, and a foil mission briefing. Wow, these were I feel like these were two fairly disappointing packs.
I mean, I'm happy with the K2SO.
Yeah.
Even though I have like multiple playsets at this point because he seems to be all I can open. But I will say your pack was a bit more thematic because you had the Wampa as well as the It Binds All Things, which features the art
that's
from
a good point.
the cave scene. That's actually why I love the playmat that we were given by FFG at the creator event because it binds all things, and it's literally in an ice cave. So
It's in the
you
ice-
win the thematic challenge.
I suppose, but that's crazy that neither of us got a hyperspace. I feel like I almost never see a pack without a hyperspace card, but oh well. Well, that's probably the last pack we'll open until Shadows of the Galaxy comes out, huh? So
Well,
enjoyed it.
on that note,
On that
let's get
note.
into some headlines. We mentioned it a little bit earlier, but Fantasy Flight Games did do a live stream, and they featured some Twin Suns gameplay. And I am actually very happy that they routinely do this, because I think that, one, the format is a ton of fun, and I think that we should promote what I will describe as more casual play. I'm not saying you can't play it competitively, but I think that it's just a really enjoyable format when you play it casually.
Yeah.
And I like that they are keeping it on people's minds, because I know that I've already been looking through some of the reveals, the spoilers, and thinking about what I can add to my existing Twin Suns decks, because set one, obviously, it's a bit hard to be creative. You just don't have the size of a card pool necessary, but now we've got new leaders coming, as well as a bunch of new aspected cards, and I am very excited to try out some of these together.
Yeah, totally. It's fun to be thematic with it right now. I think I've mentioned this before, where I built 4 Twin Suns decks and made them all just purely thematic. You know, like we had, like I made a Han and Chewie deck, and I just put all the Rebel stuff in there, right? And I made like a Hera and Sabine deck, and I tried to make it all Spectres and then as much of that era as I could, you know. And then it was Tarkin and Vader, it was all Imperial stuff, and then we had Boba and IG-88, who was all the bounty hunters and the, you know, underworld stuff that was available at the time. And I was really pleased with the results. Like, all the decks played very evenly with each other. Everyone had a lot of fun at the table, including 2 of the 4 people that had never played Star Wars Unlimited before. They were able to get into it from a thematic side. So, yeah, I mean, like, I keep Twin Suns casual. That's what I say. The only Magic the Gathering I play now is Commander, and I only play it casually because it's just fun if you have a group where the thing that they're most interested in is just building a neat deck with either a theme or like something cool to show off, and then you just try to show off that thing, and it's fun and people are entertained by it. Like, I always felt like the purpose of these types of games was to just have fun and entertain people with your deck, you know, not to try to win. So whenever people take these casual formats and try to make them hyper competitive, I'm kind of like, well, like, that's kind of not the point. I mean, it's you can play it however you want, but keep Twin Suns casual, I say.
I do think it'll be a lot of fun with some of these new leaders to pair them, because I did the same thing. The Twin Suns deck that I play the most is a Vader Palpatine list with a bunch of the Sith units and things like that. I just wanted to go like a Dark Side Force theme. But I'm really looking forward myself, for example, to playing, even though it's going to be kind of hard because you're forced into a double command aspect, I want to play Hunter and Hera together so that I can have an excuse to jam in all of the Bad Batch clone stuff and all of the Spectre stuff. And both of them give you ways to avoid the aspect penalties anyway.
That'd be really fun.
So
Yeah.
I kind of want to choose those two, and then you know, the base options and so forth that would let you play an Omega and enough of the other ones. But I just think that taking, you know, 2 teams and mashing them together would be a lot of fun. I also kind of want to do a almost like a 2-player starter set, but not quite that, right? Just I want to build 2 decks that I always carry with me so that I can teach people Twin Suns, and I want both of them to include Boba Fett. Since we have a heroism version and a villainy version, I just think that would be kind of fun thematically to make Boba Fett confront his past in a way.
Yeah, that'd be neat.
I'm really looking forward to it. So I'm glad that they showed it off on stream.
I was thinking in a similar vein about the opportunity to build a double Han Solo deck, because we've had that promotional material image that's been out there that supposedly shows an aggression Han and what was it, a command Jabba leader. But so if we have multiple Hans, you know, then you could theoretically build a double Han deck. So that'd be kind of fun. So that's the one I'm looking forward to trying out.
Yeah, if we get
don't know what it does yet, but.
If we get a Jabba leader, for sure, I'm going to do something like with him that is, you know, trick oriented with his units and so forth, but also bounty oriented. So it might be like Jabba and Bosk or something, but I do think that would be a lot of fun as well.
Yeah, to be clear, those two appeared, like I said, on this promotional image where it's like in sort of like a fan of cards. And so we don't know. We know they apparently exist, but we don't know what they do yet. So can't really do any theory crafting aside from theoretically knowing that they exist. But it is
twin
exciting.
sons. We don't need the stuff to make sense, right? Like
No.
that's the beauty.
Not really, yeah. And with two Hans, it truly is twins. You know, identical twins.
Identical twins, clones, if you will. You can pretend that Han was cloned. Like you could. I can't wait till we have more than one Luke leader, right? So that we could pretend that the old extended universe is still canon, and we have Luke and the clone Luke that had two U's in his name. Do you remember that? There was Luke.
No, I don't remember that.
Yeah,
I didn't read that one or whatever.
Oh yeah, there was a one where he battles like a clone of himself, and so obviously it's written right so that it's not awkward that they're both called Luke, and the way they signify is the other one just has another U in his name, that sort of thing. So yeah,
it's a strange way to do it. Luke and Luke. Why not do like 2 Ks or something, or 2 Ls? You know, so it's like it looks different on the page, but you wouldn't really be saying it that differently.
I don't know.
If it's two L's, people might say Uke instead, I suppose. I don't know.
Yeah, or if it's 2 Ks, it's luck at that point. Who knows? I do know, though, that part of the whole deck building, theory crafting, is knowing the new cards that exist. So I suppose we should dive into spoilers from this week because there were a bunch. And
it is time.
I am very excited about them because we have some new archetypes potentially arriving. And as you're adjusting things on the screen, we can dive right into the leader that is signifying a whole new archetype in Kylo Ren. So yes, we have a Kylo Ren leader. I was actually kind of surprised he was included in this set, but I'm happy that he was. I love the artwork of this card, and I love what this card is, again, kind of a signal for a Chekhov's gun. So Kylo Ren is aggression and villainy. In the leader position, has text that says, action, exhaust him and discard a card from your hand. Give a unit +2/+0 for this phase. And then the tags are force and first order. And when Kylo Ren is deployed, you can deploy him when you have 4 or more resources. He becomes a 5/4 ground unit, still has force and first order tags. His text says this unit gets -1/-0 for each card in your hand. So you get an above rate unit at 5/4 for 4 that you're essentially deploying for free in an aggressive style deck, but you get that penalty if you still have cards in your hand. I really like the design of this, both because it enables multiple types of decks. First and foremost, you can play him in an aggressive list where you're just trying to empty your hand as fast as possible, obviously as the aggression aspect. But you can also play him where you're focused on the leader side, where you're discarding things, and then perhaps, we'll talk about in the future, very near future, cards where you're playing things from your discard pile. So he can enable some fun combo-oriented type decks as well. I also really like this because in a game like Star Wars Unlimited, where sequencing matters so much, right? The idea that he has this, permanent -1/-0 for each card in your hand also means that the turn order is going to fluctuate on how this interacts. Like you might want to attack with him last because you could play things from your hand.
Right.
Similarly, if your opponent wants to trade into him, they might want to attack him sooner so that you can't empty your hand. And so it's not just the -1/-0 being relevant. It's that it changes throughout the course of any given turn. I just really adore the design of this card.
Yeah, it's super interesting. I mean, when I look at this, obviously, like we're gonna look at his ship in a little bit, which is involved in all this. But I look at this and I'm like, oh, force throw, that's kind of cool, right? Because yeah, not only does it let you, you'd be, to be clear, you'd be discarding a card from your hand when you force throw this time. So that would let you theoretically keep a more expensive card, force throw yourself, eliminate one of their units on the other side, get to flip this guy, make him, that much more powerful because you have 2 less cards in your hand, and he's more free and clear to kind of like attack through. So I think it's well constructed to be a successful aggressive deck. So that's exciting to have a card that flips on 4 like this and has a lot of aggressive potential on the villainy side of things. That's pretty neat. So I'm excited about the card. I hope we get more discard pile shenanigans. that enable this to do some more tricks. We've got a couple, but I don't think we have like a ton yet. But either way, I don't even think this needs a ton. I think this can just be a very aggressive low to the ground deck that has a little bit of that in that, and that'll be good enough to make him, theoretically viable just for set 2. So yeah, is exciting leader, very exciting leader to see come out. Yeah.
One last thing before we move on. I also love that you can benefit from playing things outside of your potential aspect combo based on some of the existing mechanics. So like when this was first revealed, the card I thought of immediately was actually Bamboozle. I was like, if I play an aggressive Kylo Ren deck that is, paired with Cunning, right? So Cunning, Aggression, Villainy, you can still play Bamboozle and not worry about paying the tax because you can just discard another Cunning card. And so now you're activating, Kylo Ren's abilities that much faster and getting a benefit and avoiding the aspect penalty tax. I think that there's going to be some really neat deck building options with Kylo, and that's what excites me.
Yeah. Very well constructed hero, it seems like. It's a leader, I should say. It's neat that like we've seen so many leaders. Like the first set had so many that if the second set matches it, like, and they're all this varied, it's just such a huge variety in deck building potential, which is very, very fun. But let's move on. We got a lot to cover as usual. Yeah. Our next one we're going to look at is a card that I think is going to shake up the metagame quite a bit. It's Concord Dawn Interceptors, 3-cost Vigilance Heroism, a 1/4 Mandalorian vehicle fighter up in space. It has Sentinel, and this unit gets +2/+0 while defending. So this card is huge. If you're playing a slower heroism vigilance deck, you are going to be including this card because attacking into a 3/4 with Sentinel is something nobody wants to do in space right now. Because if you think about a lot of the aggressive space options, the 4 health shuts you down already. We see things like that with a System Patrol Craft and all that, which is a 3/4 that comes out for 4. But this will be able to get out there fast enough to hamstring a lot of things like Green Squadron A-Wing, which would just die if it ran into this. Millennium Falcon can't kill it, and it would take more damage back. It's a scary card to run into. This shuts down aggression in space very hard, very early. So I almost wonder, as I've been seeing some of the cards come out for this set, if very aggressive low to the ground decks like we've seen with some of these Sabine lists and all that, how viable will these be? It seems like there's going to be potentially more rough matchups for that kind of deck in general. So hard to tell for sure just yet, but this card is definitely going to be a big part of shutting those decks down early. It's a great card.
I don't disagree with anything that you said. It's a phenomenal card. I think that it's even made better by the fact that it has the Mandalorian tag on it and that it's in Vigilance. So obviously Mandalorians care quite a bit about upgrades, and in Vigilance you're going to have access to shields. So this potentially fills a couple of holes in that regard. I will also say, though, that while I'm a bit scared as somebody who plays a lot of Sabine, I still think that there will be some room for aggressive decks to continue to shine, in large part because, yes, there are a number of great control options, especially low to the ground early drops, 2, 3, and 4 cost cards.
Yeah.
But if we run into a meta where those are the cards that are being included in decks, then the way you beat those decks is by going greedier, right? Mm-hmm. So we could see, the rise of Palpatine in a slower meta. And then once Palpatine starts winning events, what is that susceptible to? Well, it's the aggro game plan. So I do think that there's going to be a bit of the traditional triangle that arises. Mm-hmm. It's just going to be hard to guess what is the right thing to bring to any given event. But this card is great. I think that this is going to be a monster in limited as well, because it's only an uncommon, and that is a big presence in space.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, fits right in with some of these mid-rangey Luke decks that exist right now. Again, like I've been saying this, I feel like every week, but mid-range Bo-Katan, with Vigilance, red blue, right, where you play something more tempo-based. This is going to definitely slow things down the air and let you get to some of your bigger plays later and capitalize on some of those upgrades. So. Very exciting card. As an aggro player as well, my heart bleeds a little bit, seeing this. But what can you do? I don't. If you're gonna see the game pushed in any direction, pushing it towards the mid range is probably the best direction to push it. That's where the most interaction takes place on the board, and I think that's where a game like this excels. So I don't mind that. I'm excited about this card. But you ready to move on?
Oh, absolutely. Let's talk about the next one, which is
Here you go.
Rickety Quad Jumper. This is a 2-cost space unit, only with the vigilance aspect. Has fringe, vehicle, and transport as the tags. 1/3 stat line. On attack, you may reveal the top card of your deck. If it's not a unit, give an experience token to another unit. Leave the revealed card on top of your deck. This is very, very interesting to me personally because it has a ton of potential if it's left alone, but it's also very killable.
Yes.
And the fact that it's a common also makes it a really interesting inclusion in limited environments. But again, a 1/3 stat line in space for 2 is not great, but it is single aspect. And again, the last thing you want to do is leave it around because you don't want it to be giving out free experience tokens to a bunch of other stuff. And this being a vigilance unit means you're, in a constructed environment anyway, you're likely to have a bunch of non-unit cards because you're going to be running, whether it's upgrades in a Mandalorian deck or removal in a more vigilance control deck, you're going to have options there. And then you can pair it with cards like R2-D2 and others where you can kind of see them ahead of time as well.
Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying there. I think props to them for, even though this isn't a Mandalorian unit, it still sort of fits the theme of the expansion in that it does throw upgrades around in experience tokens. There's a lot to think about with this card. I think you're right where it's probably going to see the majority use in limited. Where it's going to have the highest chance of sticking around. There's some sequencing stuff where you play it on turn 1, even if you have the initiative, you can't really attack with it first because you'll want to play another card to potentially put an experience token on because you can't put it on itself. So that's going to give your opponent, yet more time to kill it. If they do feel that obligated to kill it, then it is the whole, well, it's just 3 more health on my base argument, which is something to consider too. So I don't know how viable it's going to be in constructed decks and premier decks, I guess we should say in this game. But it is a card that makes you think. And so I do like that it's just a card, like many cards in this game where you kind of have to really think about everything that goes into its usage. A lot of non-card text depth is what I like to keep saying, with the game in general, a lot of cards in it. So pretty cool.
Yep. Yeah. One last thing I'll point out just from the limited perspective is because it's a common and it's so easy to get them, it really shines if you can stick 2 of them and your opponent has no space presence because they can just buff each other.
That's
and
true.
Then it's a problem very quickly.
That is true.
Because if one, the other will trigger because you leave the card on the top of your deck. It doesn't go away after you get it. So it's like a guaranteed, you're just giving them +1/+1 over and over again.
Yeah. That is interesting. You play one and then you ECL the other one in. I don't know. You can do some fun stuff with it either way. I guess this card too, arrow wise, we can call this a sequel card because I think the only time this ever appears in the movies is in The Force Awakens, where they're deciding where Finn and Rey are trying to find a ship to escape the planet that they're on, Jakku, and they're gonna take the quad jumper, but then it blows up, so then they have to take this piece of junk that we find out is a Millennium Falcon. So there you go. Which apparently was just sitting there.
Just sitting there.
Just sitting
like
there.
It does.
One of the most famous ships in the galaxy, just sitting there. But that's a whole different podcast. Let's move on. We don't have any more packs, but check it out. It's the Finalizer. That's right. 11 for an 11/11 Star Destroyer. Command, villainy, first order vehicle, capital ship. Has overwhelm, of course. Why would it not? And when played, choose any number of friendly units. Each of those units captures an enemy non-leader unit in the same arena. So it's a very interesting card to think about. Again, of course, it's going to be a card that, like, oh my gosh, I kicked my camera stand. It's going to come out, very, very late in the game. There we go. Moving it with my feet back in position. But when it does, if you've got anything else on the board, you're going to be just taking everything they've got, and then you're going to be theoretically swinging for 11 with Overwhelm, if they even have anything yet at that point. So it is a finishing blow type card. Yet another expensive Star Destroyer. I think these all are fun. I think getting them to actually land in a game is a little bit tricky. We've seen people make things like Avenger work, but things like Devastator, we don't see as often. And I think this is going to, unless the game can really be slowed down, this is going to kind of be in that category where it's cool, it's neat to see, it's a fun legendary, but you're not going to see it hit the board too often,
Okay, let me start with the positives.
All right.
I love the art on this card. I think the hyperspace version is going to look outstanding.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
I love the design and the theme of this card. However, I don't think it's very good, and I think the only time it might ever have its moment in the sun, pun very much intended, will be in a long Twin Suns game. And the reason I say that is because in order for you to get good value for this, like the most bang for your buck, you need to be playing this in a situation where, one, the games went long enough for you to even do it, but two, you have units and your opponent has units as well.
Yeah.
And it's very weird because if you're making it that late in the game, it's probably because you're playing some sort of control deck. You don't want your opponent to have a bunch of units. And if you have a bunch of units, you've probably already stabilized and turned the corner, and you should be kind of closing out the game anyway. But this really is only good if you are playing this and then you have, a couple of other units that have opposing units in the same arena that they can gobble up. Now, in those cases, outstanding play, right? It's basically a one-sided board wipe, and you're going to just absolutely crush the opponent. It's called the finalizer for a reason, because you will close those games out. But it's such a niche scenario, and I have a hard time envisioning moments where, it's like you were saying, where Avenger isn't, better. Or even when I compare it to within the same aspects, right? Devastator. Devastator comes down, and it comes down a turn sooner. It provides Sentinel, and you can deal that damage to any unit. It does not have to be the same arena. And so Devastator on either an empty board or a close to empty board is almost always going to be a better play. Whereas Finalizer, even if it's, entering play, yes, it can eat something itself, but it has to target something in the same arena. And then you're not left with a Sentinel unit, right? So when I compare this to Devastator, I think on an empty board or a close to empty board, Devastator is just going to be better. In the rare situation, like I said, where you have a bunch of units and your opponents have a bunch of units, and that's why I mentioned Twin Suns, because you might have 2 or 3 units, and then you might have one opponent that has one on ground, another opponent that has one on ground, and another one in space, and now suddenly you eat everybody's units, right? That's where I think this shines. So I think that this is definitely a card that will have the most impact and honestly just be the most fun to play will be in Twin Suns.
Yeah, and like I said, at the end of the day, for me, it gets points because it's just a big legendary Star Destroyer, and I think that's fun. And like someday when there's a lot of Star Destroyers out, I'm gonna make a Star Destroyer deck and just try to play ultra slow and just keep slamming them. I don't know, like it's just too cool to not do, at some point, right? Because we even have set one Piet, the command villainy Piet lets anything 6 or more come in with ambush. So you get him to live somehow, and then you just start ambushing in Star Destroyers. It sounds fun,
Yeah, with him, this has Overwhelm, and it's an 11/11. So
yeah,
that is a very reasonable play.
Yeah, maybe this is in a slow Palpatine deck, like a double command Palpatine or something. I don't know, but either way, could be fun. I look at this card and I just like. That just goes on the list for the Oops All Star Destroyers deck someday, Yep. Moving on. Speaking of Palpatine, go ahead.
They went and they did it. They printed Palpatine's Return. A little sad it's not somehow Palpatine returned, but nonetheless.
That's a little too on the nose. Everyone's been asking for this. I'm like, I don't think they could get away with that. They got away with Shoot First, which I'm kind of shocked about, and McClunky, but they apparently somehow Palpatine returned is too far for now.
Nonetheless, this card, it is a 6-cost event. It is Villainy and Command, has the Force and Plan tags. Now it says you play a unit from your discard pile. It costs 6 less. If it's a Force unit, it costs 8 less instead. Now, I do love the thematic use there because obviously the unit Palpatine costs 8, and so this allows you to play Palpatine, literally Palpatine returns.
Yeah.
But this card, I think, is very, very good, even if you are not building like a combo deck to exploit it. Just paying 6 to play something from your discard pile if you're in command is probably really powerful because you could play a Vader, right? from
That's what I was
your
thinking,
discard pile after you've already played it, and he's a Force unit. You can play that Palpatine. You can play something else, and it will still be fine. But then you factor in the combo uses, and suddenly it gets a whole lot more interesting, right? If you are playing this with Cunning, for example, and you're playing Greedo to shore up your early game, and he accidentally discards a Vader, and then you then play a ramp card, and suddenly on your opponent's like resource 5 turn, you're playing Vader because Greedo discarded it from the top. That's a really impactful play. Like, that's going to be nuts. Similarly, we already saw Kylo Ren revealed, and he lets you discard whatever you want from your hand, so you could use that to set up cool combos here as well. I love this card. I have a feeling in the future I might come to hate this card because it feels really strong. But right now I'm gushing over it.
Yeah, I think I just love it as a combo enabler, kind of like you described, where it's the type of card where it's like, I saw some people looking at me, oh, it's so expensive. It's like, yeah, but like, yeah, you can do exactly the kind of stuff you just outlined, right? Where you can have some fun combos where you're bringing stuff in really early if you do ramp a little bit into this, you know? So, the Vader's the obvious one. Obviously, Emperor is made to do, but just in general, that's the thing. Like, what if you built Kylo Ren and you didn't go for a super low to ground aggressive deck? What if you went command aggression and then you played more of a mid-rangey kind of thing where you just trying to sort of control the board until you can play something like this and bring back a huge unit that you discarded? Exactly. So I think this is just a neat enabler card, and I'm excited to see what people do with it.
And on that front as well, with Kylo, if you are using him as a more control-oriented leader, that +2 is super relevant because it allows you to trade up very well. So if you are running, super laser technicians, being able to discard your card that you want to bring back while also letting that trade with something that has 4 health is very relevant. So I'm definitely going to play test this in a few decks, and I'm really looking forward to it. But like I said, I have a feeling that I might come to hate this card later. But I really like it right now.
I mean, we know from many card games over the years that anything that lets you mess with cost is going to be a very impactful card. That said, You're My Only Hope, which is something a little bit harder to put together on the Rebel side. It did have some usage in like kind of one of the Casino Han versions that was out there where you use like R2 to check the top card and all that, and then you could get some good ones with that. But this is like a much more usable version of that concept, I feel like. So it's cool. Yep. It's cool to see. It might be very strong, but that's okay. It's a rare. It should be strong. Yeah. Let's move on to Kylo's TIE Silencer. Cost 2, it's aggression villainy, just like Kylo Ren leader card. 3/2 first order vehicle fighter. Action, if this unit was discarded from your hand or deck this phase, play it from your discard pile, paying its cost. I'm glad they included paying its cost in there because that is a point of confusion for a lot of new players. So good that they're starting to include that remind text a little bit on some of these cards. It's a legendary as well. But yeah, I mean, fits in perfectly, right? With Kylo's ability, you discard it using his ability, and then you can just play it again right away. So you get the +2 bonus, and you get to play this. You can, bring it back a little bit later in the turn per se. But yeah, discard shenanigans. I'm for it. I'm excited to see it.
I really like this card because it very clearly works with Kylo, but it also potentially works with some other archetypes as well. And it could even be included in your sideboard if you are running into problems with discard in certain metas, right? We've already seen Spark of the Rebellion kind of grow in popularity, for example. We know that there are some other cards that allow you to discard things. If we ever hit a point where Force Throw on your opponent becomes really common, having something to kind of fight back, I think, is just good design. But again, going back to what I was saying before, if you're playing like Greedo and this gets discarded from your deck, or if you're playing an aggressive list into a control list that runs Vigilance, for example, and this is going to be discarded from your deck, being able to then get additional presence on the board is a big deal. So It might look benign, right? It's just 2 for a 3/2, but it is in space, and that comes at a premium, and the flexibility, I think, is really important. So I love the card. I think that it was a great addition to the game because it helps some archetypes, but it's also filling a role as far as defensive against other archetypes when you think about sideboards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally agree. Neat art too.
Great art.
I like the sort of evolution of the advanced TIE design. You know.
Yeah.
This is like, it's more like the SUV version of that, right? Where if like Vader's TIE Advanced X1 was sort of the sports car TIE fighter, or like the TIE Interceptor was kind of that, you know, this is sort of like the SUV version where it's got a similar form factor. It still attempts to be cool, but it's just a little bit more practical, which is what Kylo Ren really needs. He just demands a bit more practicality, I think, from his ships, it seems like.
I think of this as like a crossover vehicle, right?
Yeah. Small SUV crossover, yeah.
This is a advanced and an interceptor, and they have a baby, and then it's Kylo's TIE silencer.
Yeah, and then the TIE bomber is like the family van, you know. That's that's kind of it. Yeah, TIE Defender is maybe the TIE Defender is the true SUV of the TIE world. I don't know, but that's only a single seater too, so who knows? Either way, neat ship design. Didn't it get like cut in half by Rey in like the movie 9 or something like that, or was he just flying more of a regular ship at that point? I don't know. Might have noticed the eyes there. Oh yeah, he was flying more of a regular interceptor.
I was gonna say, I think it was just the regular like first order style. It wasn't his.
Right. What happened to this one? I don't know. I only saw those like once or twice. But moving on, next card we're gonna take a look at. Yeah.
This is the exact opposite of
it is.
the silencer's form factor. In fact, this is the closest to family van. This is like the windowless van of the Star Wars universe.
Not very family friendly with its apparently use, I guess. But yeah, it's definitely in the U-Haul variety almost. Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. I was thinking windowless van because of
that too. Yeah.
It is the Slaver's Freighter. This is a 5-cost space unit. It is in Cunning and Villainy. Has the Underworld Vehicle and Transport tags. Has a 4/5 stat line. When played, you may ready another unit with power equal to or less than the number of upgrades on enemy units.
Right. Very interesting, because you look at this and then you think about the bounty system and you're like, all right, well, when is a time when I can control the upgrades that are on my opponent's units? And you're like, naturally, this is when I have put bounties on those units. So this fits right into the bounty hunter sort of archetype that we're seeing in this set, where it's a way to, ready a bounty hunter so he can go collect another bounty, right? From what you've, say you put a couple bounties on things, you ready a bounty hunter you've already attacked with that phase. They might not be expecting it. This is a little bit stickier in the air. It does come a little bit later in the game at 5 costs, so there is that to consider. But it just fits in with the whole, here's something else you can do with your bounty hunters theme in this. Will it be good? I could see maybe if there's a strong bounty hunter theme centric deck, maybe with the Bosk leader, maybe this finds some play because it's expensive, but it's not too expensive. If you can set it up well, readying that unit is strong. But it just, I don't know. What do you think? I feel like it requires a little bit too much setup to be consistent, but I'm ready to be wrong too.
All right. So in limited, I think this card is complete gas because it's a 5/4 in space with tons of upside.
I agree with
Even
that.
outside of limited, I can see where this finds a home is a sideboard tool in aggressive decks, as opposed to something you play in your own bounty hunter deck. Because where I think this is going to be the best is against Mandalorian control decks. If we ever run into a meta where Bo-Katan paired with like Vigilance is the kind of control deck of choice, we know they care about upgrades. They're going to be playing them for you. You don't have to have your bounties to get this to trigger. So bringing this in from the sideboard, having this as an option where like they do something and then you play this and ready 1 or 2 other units, and then you get a 4/5 space unit out of it. Like that's a really big play in my mind. And so I like that this again exists as a potential sideboard option to kind of police the meta if it goes too far in one direction.
Yeah.
But I think that that's the most practical use as far as premier play goes, is against decks that want to play their own upgrades.
I can see that. All right. So a card with multiple uses, and with all the in limited again, with people playing their Mandalorian decks, which a lot of people are probably going to be in limited. Yeah, this can be a good answer to that too. Cool. Yeah. All right. You've raised my opinion of this card. You've successfully defeated my knee-jerk reaction to it. That's good. Yeah. All right. Cool. Ready to move on. Kira. Hey, remember Solo, a Star Wars story? Well, this is his girlfriend on Corellia, who later becomes a high-ranking person in the Black Sun organization, wasn't it? Or is it Crimson Dawn? I can't remember which one it is in that
Listen,
movie.
you need to give Daenerys Queen of Dragons, Breaker of Chains, like more respect. Put some respect on her name. But yes, this is
hanging out with Darth Maul. Apparently, that didn't end up going anywhere. But it was he was there and turned on his lightsaber for a second. So yeah. But let's talk about the card. Let's talk about Kira the card. Playing her part. What is her part, you ask? Well, it's a 4-cost cunning heroism card. She does sort of have an anti-hero arc a little bit in that movie, if I remember right. 3/5 underworld unit. When played, look at an opponent's hand, then name a card. While this unit is in play, each card with that name costs 3 more for your opponents to play. So it's kind of like a regional governor, where it comes a little bit later in the game. They can still play it, but you definitely know what they've got in their hand. So 4 for 3/5 isn't that bad stat line wise. And, you think about cards and the impact they have, like Spark of Rebellion. This can have a similar effect where your opponent just can't play a card that they need to play at a crucial time. So, I like it for that reason. And I'll certainly be looking for opportunities to play it.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's regional governor, but I think with more practicality. The stat line is, I think, a bit more appropriate for its cost. Not that regional governor is bad, but the 1/4 doesn't really give you a whole lot of presence in that early game, whereas this, I think, is a bit more protected. This is also already in aspects that care a bit more about the hand disruption, because as you said, you're going to have access to Spark of the Rebellion. You're playing double cunning. You could be running Bodhi Rook as well. You could have a turn sequence where it's, turn 1 I Spark, turn 2 I Bodhi, turn 3 I Kira, the next turn I Cantina Bouncer, whatever you do have left to play.
Oh my gosh, this is you're just describing my Jyn Erso list. This is what I'm going to do,
you got a pretty scary potential set of turns. But what you're also getting here is the information, right? You get to look at their hand when you name the card. So you're always getting something relevant. Whereas regional governor, you are just kind of guessing in the dark. I like this card. I think that it will find a home somewhere, even potentially as a sideboard option where if the meta goes slower, maybe when you're playing this, it's, a turn 7 or 8, but you're naming Devastator or Avenger or Overwhelming Barrage. I think that there's a lot of utility here.
Yeah, I love the idea of playing this in a double cunning heroism deck. I've mentioned it before. I sort of have like a kind of back burner Jyn Erso project where I'm trying to make a Jyn Erso deck that's going to win a local at some point. So no success yet on that front, but this card I think will help because I think theoretically double cunning is the best way to go with that, but. Again, that's another podcast. Suffice to say, this card would go in that deck. So it is fun to play. I think it does pair well with other heroism cunning stuff. So nicely done. Moving on.
We get another fantastic card, in my opinion.
Yeah.
In Zori Bliss. Now, fun fact about Zori. This is somebody who is on the list of Fortnite skins that are Star Wars related. I know, yeah,
Really?
You're making that face. Yeah, there are a number of obviously iconic inclusions, but for whatever reason, she was included.
Did that happen back when episode 9 came out?
Yeah, it was a part of that.
I remember they tried to make it like she was going to be like a main character or something, and then she was in like one scene basically as like Poe's ex-girlfriend or something.
Modern Boba Fett. She shows up for like a couple of scenes, has a cool outfit, and is a
except that when everybody when you say Zori Bliss, everyone goes who?
Right.
Instead of Boba Fett. So she's got some work to do in that category, but
nonetheless,
good representation here. Good card here.
Yep.
Yeah.
Zori Bliss is a 5-cost ground unit. Heroism and Cunning, has the Underworld tag. 4/7 stat line, which is pretty good for a 5-drop. also says on attack, draw a card at the start of the regroup phase, discard a card from your hand. Then also has the ability to be smuggled in for 6, and then the same aspects, cunning and heroism. So
Only one more, too.
Yeah, so very cost effective as far as smuggle goes. It's one of the few things where it's not almost like a burden. 6 for a 4/7 is still not the end of the world. But I love that for 5 you get, a 4/7 stat line. We already know on resource turn 5 playing a card like Boba is really effective. Obviously this is not a leader, so you're not getting it for free like you do with the Boba leader, but the on attack here is also really good because you can extend your hand, but then the discard portion as well could potentially set up, some combos that we're now starting to see, right? Like this is very clearly a game where we're going to have to start caring about, the discard portion of things. I really dig the design of this, and I'm kind of excited to see what other support there is for this character.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I do like that it's only one more to smuggle out. It's going to be fun to see what other discard stuff happens. It looks like we're getting it on both sides, heroism and villainy. So it's neat to see. And it makes me wonder a little bit too, especially with the Fortnite skin. Are we going to see her come back in some other show at some point? I feel like this is one of the characters from the sequels that's sort of primed for a return like that. But who knows? We'll have to wait and see. Either way, it's nice to see, like I mentioned before, represented well in card form at least. So, we'll see what deck she ends up fitting into. Do you feel like it's a little bit limited with just the Underworld tag, though? That's what I've been thinking about some of these cards, is that they have these good abilities, but many of them are only the Underworld tag, so they don't fit in as well with other decks that look at like Rebel for, using a fleet commander with them or something like that, or fleet lieutenant rather with them, for example. Are you worried about that at all? These kind of single trait cards?
I don't know that I would say I'm worried yet. If anything, just because we kind of don't have the complete picture. It's something to keep an eye on. I guess that's where I'm at, right? There's actually quite a few cards where, like, on the surface, some feel like kind of benign. They don't feel like that big of a deal, but I'm kind of keeping an eye on them because they could be a problem. And then there are others that I'm on the other end of the spectrum. I think are really powerful, but they might not be nearly as bad as I think. So I'm trying to not be overly reactionist. And I know that that's like not the fun part of content, right? We're supposed to be like,
no,
this
react.
Is the best card ever.
Yeah, game broken. Oh.
I tend to pride myself on decent analysis, and so I'm trying to be very measured in some of these.
I think that's fair. I unfortunately kind of trend in the same direction. Although I did have very firm feelings on Spark of Rebellion. I'm glad to say I feel like those feelings were justified because that card is ridiculously strong. But as far as this goes, we'll see. I do think traits matter more than people oftentimes weigh them in terms of judging cards in this game, because not being able to use Fleet Lieutenant on this could potentially be a reason you don't put it in the deck, right? So it is something to think about anyway. But we'll see how it all shakes down. Moving on, I think we're getting to the closer to the end. We'll see how many are left. We have a 2-cost double cunning card, a new adventure. It's a Gambit, Rip Gambit. If you watched X-Men 97, that's a whole different thing. But spoiler alert, return a non-leader unit that costs 6 or less to its owner's hand. Then its owner may play it for free. There is so much you can do with this card. Being able to bounce one of your units back and then play it for free that same phase. Getting rid of a problematic unit for just long enough to maybe get rid of a Sentinel and attack through. Then they can play it again or something like that. Excuse me. But yeah, I see a card like this and I'm like, this is a scary card because there is a lot of stuff that people are going to be discovering that you can do with this. Should be very strong.
This card is going to be a highlight of double cunning decks, especially villainy ones. There are so many good things you can do with this, but where I immediately went was to the bouncer.
Yes, I was thinking the same thing. Yeah, Cantina Bouncer, yeah.
Because you're in double cunning. But I will also say that the Bounty Hunter crew is a kind of silly and insane potential loop right? Because that gets back events and it has ambush. And then this lets you pick it back up. And so you can, you know, potentially run into a situation where as long as it's not dying during the ambush, you can just keep picking things off over and over and over again, looping these together until somebody finds a way to break it.
You have to have 2 resources to pay for it each time.
Oh no, 2 resources.
There is that, but yeah, when you've got enough to play a bounty hunter crew, especially if you're doing an off aspect, which a lot of people are with that card right now, then yeah, you're gonna be able to play it like 4 times or something. So you're right. It's more like it's like Mace Windu crew now or something like that, because they're just gonna be coming in and ambushing over and over again. So. Yeah, it's a very interesting card. Anything you can imagine in Double Cunning that you want to bounce your hand and play for a second time is big. You know, your Cantina bouncer comes out like you mentioned. You attack with it, then you bounce it with this and you play it again, and then you know, return something else in their hand, or just return whatever you returned last time. It's yeah, this card is legitimately terrifying.
I mean, even like, I know it says 6 or less, but even some of the more low to the ground things have really powerful when played abilities. Being able to get another activation out of like a Bodhi Rook could be game breaking. Totally.
And it's one of those cards too where it's like, I wouldn't mind paying 4 for this, I think. Especially if I'm bouncing something that costs, you know, 4 or greater to my own hand, you know. I think this is the card where, yeah, it's a double aspect, but the extra cost penalty of playing it in a single cunning deck really doesn't bother me one bit. I think this card is just fantastic. I think it's just one of the strongest cards that they've printed yet. Once again in cunning, you know, for those taking notes at home. But I think this is going to be a very impactful one. Yeah, for sure.
The last thing I want to point out, because I just think it's absurd, because the power level of this card feels really, really high, is that this is only an uncommon.
Yeah, right? Yeah. I'm going to be putting this in my limited decks. Yeah, I'm going to be putting this in my limited decks. No question. Yeah.
Because like worst case scenario is, even if you don't have a good when it comes into play, you know, abilities or anything, if you have a 6-drop that has taken some damage and you just want to heal it, like, it does that too.
Yeah, exactly. It's completely versatile. Like you can do so many things with it. I'm just looking through some random cards just to see, you know, what maybe you can do. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's not even,
you know, you talked about just paying extra for this, right? Like I would totally pay 4 to like return Chrysanthemum to my hand and then replay him, especially if there are things with bounties out and you can then ready him and get more attacks.
This might as well just be like 4 costs with a single cunning aspect, because I think that's how people are going to treat it. I think it's that good. I have like the same strong feelings I have that I had about Spark of Rebellion when we were reviewing those cards way back when, before the game came out. I have those feelings about this card too. My force sense is tingling. My card sense is going off, as if millions of local players suddenly cried out and were silenced because the people around them were like, "Hey, stop crying out! You're interrupting our game."
Well, I know we still have a few more.
We do. Let's move on. This one's cool.
Yes.
Go for it.
This one is interesting.
Yeah.
Gray Squadron Y-Wing. This is a 2-cost space unit. It is only in the heroism aspect. Is a rebel vehicle fighter. Is a 1/3 stat line. But on attack, an opponent chooses a unit or base they control. You may deal 2 damage to it. Now, this is very interesting to me because so like on the first very like reveal day, I was like, all right, I'm comparing it to the generic X-Wing, right? The generic X-Wing is a 2/3. This is a 1/3. They're both filling a similar role. Obviously, the Squadron Y-Wing represents more total damage because it's 1 from the attack plus 2, but you don't get to control where it goes. It also doesn't defend as well, meaning when your opponent attacks into it, they're not going to take 2 damage the way they would from an X-Wing. So overall, I think that balance-wise, it's fine, it's clever, and I like that it's a common. But the real reason that I have been thinking about this card since it was revealed is because I love a good Chekhov's gun, and I love playing like hey, where is a direction they could go for design in the future? And the fact that this says an opponent chooses a unit or base they control really like threw me for a loop, because it should just say a unit or their base, but it's base they control. So are we ever going to see a situation where we have more than one base?
That's a good
Are we
point.
going to
I
get a
hadn't thought of
set
that.
where we have like it's you have heroes or something where you can play with two bases that are both like 10 health or 15 health, and then when one base is destroyed, it's just gone, and then you still have to kill the other base, but the benefit is that you had an extra aspect, but then once it's destroyed, you have to play all those cards at penalty because you no longer have it, right? Like
That'd add a lot of complexity.
there's a very cool, complex, I think, area of potential design space there that I had never even considered until I read the way this was worded. So I'm not saying that will happen. Obviously, I don't know the future any more than anyone else, but like that's what this card did to me, and it sent me through a big, long what if sequence when I saw it.
I mean, I like that it's, even if it doesn't mean that way, I like that it's worded this way so that it would theoretically fit into that type of thing down the road.
Yeah.
That's just good card wording. And it's fun to see because a lot of card games kind of suffer wording wise in the first couple sets while the rules are kind of getting hammered out. The standards for card text are kind of getting hammered out. That always takes a little while with any card game that comes out. So this does seem very forward thinking. And it's just kind of like, I like cards that make your opponent make that choice too, right? Because first of all, it's a nice benefit for them that they can make that choice. On the other hand, you do run into the extra little layer of mental complexity while you're trying to play this game, where it's like, all right, I'm trying to figure out my turn. I'm trying to play really well. Now I have to figure out what are the ramifications of 2 more damage on my base versus 2 damage on one of my units. Now you have to become even more predictive with that. So it does put your opponent in a challenging state to try to figure out how to properly play around this, which I like. Anything that mentally taxes your opponent in the game is a good thing for you. So, very, very cool card. Very interesting. So we have a couple bonus ones that for some reason they didn't load into the slideshow properly. So here's our first one with that, as you see the edit there. It is a 1-cost event, aggression, villainy. Give into your anger. It's innate. You're just innately giving into your anger because it's just there, simmering under the surface, apparently. Deal 1 damage to an enemy unit. Its controller's next action this phase must be an attack action with that unit if able. It must attack a unit if able. This is for 1 cost. I mean, it's a rare, but for a 1-cost event, this seems like a very impactful card. This is a little bit of a scary one, because just being able to dictate not only what a unit does on their side, but dictate their entire next action in the game effectively lets you take 2 actions in a row. Wow. This is a card. This is kind of a shocking one to see come out.
Yeah. This is so flexible. First of all, I love the art, and I love that specifically they called out, Luke attacking Vader, because I think that this card is going to be very good in Darth Vader style control decks.
For sure.
Just given the fact that this has villainy and it's a 1-cost activator, you were kind of already running, the stormtroopers, and in some case even the TIE fighters for cheap activators for your hero ability, and this gives you yet another way to do that. But it can deal 1 damage to an enemy unit, so it might just finish something off. But even if it doesn't, as you said, you're dictating their action, but it's even more than that. It's also potentially forcing really bad trades, right? If you are playing a control deck and you know that they want to go attack your base, right? They want to go straight for the throat with their first action, but you have initiative. You could have this, attack something meaningless, right? You might not even have your unit survive. It might not be forcing a trade, but if you save 5 damage from your base and they had to attack into like your super laser technician, that's a pretty big deal. And then there's obviously those scenarios where you can force them to trade, right? If they have a smaller unit and you have something big, making them just get almost no value and crash into your big wall is also really, really important. So I think this card is great.
Yeah, it's definitely a good card. Just straight up being 1 for 1 damage is good on the event side. Just to ping something. But yeah, then again, like everything else it means as far as dictating someone's actions is very, very strong. Because anything that lets you cheat actions in this game is very powerful. So this is gonna be a skill check kind of card too. It's gonna require some forethought to use correctly, but for the players that are good and using it well, it's gonna be very scary. We got one more.
So the last card that we have to discuss is Anima Outpost Constables. This is a ground unit for cost in Vigilance only. Only has the fringe tag, but it is a 2/6 with Sentinel. So very straightforward. However, this is actually pretty good in my opinion because it's single aspect. It's a big Sentinel. It's a common, so it's going to be a nightmare to deal with in limited. And again, has 6 health, so it's outside of takedown range very famously. I think that this card will, at a minimum, see a ton of play in limited, but it's potentially filling a role that did not exist for certain decks, specifically decks that wanted to go double blue. So when I think about like double blue Iden or things like that, especially also like on the heroism side, I think that there's a chance this could sneak into a few constructed lists. It's not going to be a staple in every Vigilance deck by any stretch, but it does fill a role that kind of didn't exist at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, there's also stuff like calculated lethality in this set, which makes these cards like a little bit weaker, but having the stats of a Bright Hope on the ground is definitely something to be wary of, especially in a limited format. And I agree where I think this is the kind of thing where you could just run it in Palpatine or something. It's like yet another Sentinel just to throw in front of people and get to that late game, So
Yeah.
any deck that wants to just go slow and do that, like that's not bad.
Just thinking out loud, lethality cares about cost, not power.
Oh, you're right. It's cost, not power.
Yeah. So that doesn't get rid of it.
Never mind.
What I was thinking about is that this is almost like a Child Sin with less conditions but less upside, right? Child Sin obviously very popular as like a 5/5 or a 6/6 on resource 4, and the benefit is that you have the attack power as well, so you can get some trades in. But if you don't want to reveal, or you don't have the blue cards to reveal, or if you're not playing villainy, again, if you're playing like a Sharut or a Luke list where you're maybe double vigilance and trying to go on that side, then this could be your Child Sin fill-in in many ways. And so that's kind of where I envisioned it.
Yeah, it could work as that. Either way, it's going to be annoying to throw in front of your opponent, especially, if they're trying to run something aggressive. Nobody wants to see 6 health across the board from on the ground. So, yeah.
Nope.
And that's
it.
That's it. That does it for our spoilers here. Yeah, that's right. And that pretty much does it for the show too. I think we've already gone about an hour and a half. So we should probably wrap it up and then reconvene next week with another couple dozen spoilers. Spoiler season. I almost feel like we should make this a separate show. Maybe we will at some point and just do like a spoiler report or something. But there's only so much time in a given day. So for now, we're using this show as mostly spoiler review. But I don't mind because it's fun. Get to talk about cards. Get to see what we were wrong about later on. Get to see what we were right about. And that's a ton of fun. Any final thoughts on what we saw revealed this week before we move on?
Just that it's really looking like set 2 is going to be as much fun as set 1. I was very impressed with the thought and the quality of just overall design in set 1, and I was a bit worried that we might see a bit of a fall off, right? Because sometimes you put all your effort into the initial foundation and then you kind of operationalize your processes and so forth.
Sure.
But that doesn't seem to be the case here. This set is looking really solid as a standalone set. It's looking great from a limited perspective. And all of the leaders that I've seen have made me go like, oh, I could see myself building a deck around that, right? Whether it's Bosk with bounties or Kylo with the discard. And so I'm just overall very impressed and looking forward to set 2.
Yeah, same here. And on that note, thanks to our sponsor, Invasion Comics, up in Canada, just north of Toronto. And that seems like a long way away, right? If you're in the United States, all the way up in Canada. But don't worry, because if you go to Invasion CNC, .ca, invasioncnc.ca, they will ship to you anywhere in North America. So you can go ahead and go there and use Ice Cave 5 to get 5% off Star Wars Unlimited singles. Yes, that's right. One of the few places out there with Star Wars Unlimited singles, and you get 3% off of sealed products. So there's a lot of reason to go and do that and, have it shipped to you. Why not? It's only
Or if you're
a click away.
like me, if you're like me, you could just take a short 5-hour drive and go pick it up.
A little bit more than 5 hours for me.
That's the benefit. Yeah, it's a little bit further for you out there on the West
It'd be like
Coast.
35 hours for me, but yeah.
5 hours for me. So
thank goodness
sometimes it might be worth the trip.
Yep, that's right. So anyway, thanks to Invasion Comics and Cards for sponsoring the show. On that note, it's time to wrap it all up. Before we do, we're going to get back on track with the Hello There releases soon. The mailbag is coming back again. Logistically, we're just working things out, so bear with us while we do that. Thanks for sticking around. And Charmer, it's time, once again, for you to do the thing.
May the Force be with you.